Okay, so we were going to talk a little bit about how to set up your lifestyle so that you can make healthy habits stick. But after I have been kind of diving into perimenopause and menopause a little bit for the first time and actually looking at some research that's done specifically on females, I really wanted to push this subject first and then focus on the habits after that, because I just feel like this is information that women do not know and it needs to get out there. And so this week we are going to be talking specifically about women in that 35 to 50-year-old age range and beyond, because that's the age group I'm in right now, and I am very interested in this. I had my doctor tell me I am in the perimenopausal stage of life, and it doesn't mean that I'm necessarily going through perimenopause yet, but what it does mean is that I need to start looking into some of these things. So I want to help you. So we are talking perimenopause. Now, what is the difference between perimenopause and menopause? So perimenopause is when your body starts going through different changes that are caused by your hormones starting to drop, specifically estrogen. So estrogen is going to start to drop, and progesterone is also not going to be present when we don't ovulate. And so eventually all of our hormones are going to be in a lower state and post-menopause, but during these years of perimenopause, our hormones can be all over the place, depending on if we ovulate or not, and just what's happening with our body. And menopause itself is defined as one moment in time when you have gone a year without getting a period. Then you are officially in menopause. Some symptoms can continue to last, but usually the hardest part is perimenopause, which is what I know myself, a lot of my friends, and so anyway, I want to start talking about perimenopause, I want to start talking about menopause, and I want to talk about what that means for us, for our fitness, and for our nutrition. Now, fitness, what is going to happen is estrogen is kind of like our testosterone. So when we start losing our estrogen, we are also going to start losing our ability to build muscle. So for those of you who are in your earlier 30s, maybe even 20s, you want to start building as much muscle as possible, but it does not mean that it's too late for us if we're already in perimenopause. So what we can do to counteract this is lift heavier and eat enough protein. I know you've heard this from me before, but the part that really surprises me is the rep range that we are supposed to be lifting in. And so when we are trying to counteract this loss of estrogen, we actually want to be lifting more around 3 to 8 reps. So this is going to be heavy. So lifting heavy can sound really scary, but when we are lifting in that rep range, we are really signaling to our body that we need muscle, and it is going to respond, and it is going to help us to either build or at least maintain our muscle. And not only is it going to do that, but it's going to prevent us from putting on some fat, especially in our midsection. That's where women will put on a lot of fat, especially in perimenopause. And so lifting really heavy is going to be helpful. It sounds scary. We think about doing lifts and we think about injury, we think about all of these things. But what I want you to think about is getting with a personal trainer or watching a lot of videos, researching, making sure that you are doing your lifts properly. Because as long as you're doing that, you're going to be just fine. So lifting heavy isn't something we need to be afraid of. It's going to be empowering. So muscle is good, lifting heavy is good, is something we are capable of doing. And if you are just starting out, getting that form correct is so important. And so getting with a personal trainer or making sure you're doing it correctly, however you do that, that is the base that's going to help you lift heavier. And that 3 to 8 reps, that's, is something that everyone is capable of. Everyone, you don't have to have been an athlete. It's just a matter of moving your body well and being able to load it up so you can signal to your body that you want to keep that muscle. Now, along with that, we want to do 3 to 5 sets. So that seems a little bit longer, but we're going to focus on maybe 1 or 2 at most compound moves per session where we're lifting this heavy. In addition to that one heavy lift that you focus on, you can do some accessory lifts that are a little bit lighter and a little bit higher in rep. And that is going to help set. And so lifting this 3 to 8 reps, 3 to 5 sets is going to help you build that muscle, keep that muscle, and also not gain that fat, especially around your midsection. Now, don't forget about the protein. We'll come back to nutrition soon. But another thing you want to add in for bone density during perimenopause is actually when we usually lose our bone density as well. Sometimes it can happen post-menopause, but perimenopause is when these changes are happening and when a lot of that muscle loss and bone density loss can happen. So adding in plyometrics is going to be very helpful in addition to heavy lifting. Both of those things are going to help with your bone mineral density. And so plyometrics don't have to be jumping up on a super high box. It can be jump roping. It can be even jumping off of a lower box. It can be explosive wall push-ups where you're going against the wall and you're pushing. So plyometrics, again, it might scare you away a little bit, but having this kind of jump training, having some kind of explosive movement, it can even be upper body, like I was saying. But when you're doing these plyometrics, doing them safely, having your form done correctly, modifying them to where you're at is important. And that is going to really help with bone density. So things like running, walking, that might not be enough to help with bone density because you need it to be multi-directional. So when you're doing plyometrics and when you're doing this heavy weightlifting where you're going to be changing directions, that's going to be even more important to maintain your bone density. And a lot of people can even reverse bone density loss by doing some of these different workouts. Now, the last thing that really blew my mind is HIIT and sit, which I'll talk about here in just a second. So HIIT workouts, high intensity interval training, is one thing that is actually very good for perimenopause and menopause. The reason being, again, it is going to send a strong message to our brain that we do not need to store fat, and we need to build up our muscle. And when we're doing these HIIT things, we are going to go as hard as we can. HIIT specifically is going to be from 1 to 4 minutes, and then we are going to fully recover. And then we're going to hit it again for 1 to 4 minutes. The modalities, there are several modalities that this could be for HIIT. But when you're doing those kinds of things, it could even be like circuit training. But when you are doing those kind of phases, whether it's on a treadmill, whatever, there's a lot of different ways this can look. Then you need to make sure that you're getting that full recovery, and a full workout might be 30 to 35 minutes. So when we're looking at these things, we're not doing it for as much time, but we're going to hit it a little bit harder. So we're going to up the intensity and we're going to lower the volume, because that is going to help our brain signal that we need to keep that muscle or even build that muscle. And it's going to also help us prevent us from putting on that fat. Now, we may have heard that HIIT is going to be raising our cortisol. Any workout is going to raise our cortisol, but our baseline cortisol is actually going to be lower than if we are doing the traditional cardio of going out and running every single day. And so that is going to be helpful too if our cortisol is lower with our body composition and with our overall stress management, all of the things that come with all of the hormonal changes that are happening. Sit is for sprint interval training, and that is so sprint interval training is something that is this super high intensity for 10 to 30 seconds and then a full recovery before you do the next session of it. And maybe at first you can only do 2 and you want to work your way up to about 6 of these. And this does not have to be sprinting necessarily. Again, you can use different modalities. So this could be on a rowing machine. It could be on a bike with the handles on it. I do it on my elliptical at making sure I crank up both the intensity and the hills, I don't know exactly what word, incline. And you can sprint if you want to, you can run upstairs. But for those of you that aren't able to do some of these things because of injury, the good news is whatever you can do all out, that might look different for you. Some people, it might be walking up a hill, and that might even be hard to do for 10 to 30 seconds. So again, it depends on where you specifically are at. So with sprint interval training, it is an all-out effort for 10 to 30 seconds, something that you cannot do for longer than that, and then you're fully recovering. So that could be anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes in between those intervals. And so with all of these things, how often do I do this? What should I do for this and that? And what should a typical week look like? So lifting, you want to do 3 to 4 days a week. And then with your plyos, you can do that maybe twice a week. HIIT and sit, you can want to do 2 to 3 times a week as well. And so when you look at some of these things, your overall workout time is not going to be very long, but you are going to have some high intensity included in there. You're going to have a lot of rest in between, and you are going to have very low volume because you have that high intensity. And so it's not necessarily going to take more time. It is going to require a lot of effort when you're in the action of doing it, but then you get to fully recover before you do it. So as a whole, we're looking specifically at female physiology, specifically when we're starting to lose estrogen and some of the signals that we need to send to our brain so that we are not going to lose all of this lean mass and we're not going to put on a lot of fat. And so one part of this is the workouts, all the things I talked about. So we're lifting really heavy. We're looking at, even in that 3 to 5 rep range as much as possible, that 3 to 5 model of 3 to 5 reps, 3 to 5 sets with 3 to 5 minutes of rest in between is a good way to remember it. Plyometrics, HIIT or sit. And then you also want to make sure you're doing your plyos. I'm not sure if I said that or not, but those are the things that you want to do. Can you do cardio? Yes, but it's going to come second to all of these things. And because of that, you're not going to be doing it that often because you want to be able to fully recover. Now we are going to get into the nutrition side of what women should be eating, when they should be eating it, and all of those things, specifically in perimenopause and menopause. So when we are looking at women who are going through these changes from the age 35 to 50, what's going to happen is our estrogen is going to drop a lot. And that is what helps us to build muscle and to maintain muscle. It's kind of like women's testosterone. So we are going to talk a little bit about what's going to happen, what macros we should be eating, when we should be eating to signal to our body that it doesn't need to put in fat because it's already kind of in this stressed out mode. So we're going to start with fats, dietary fat. So you want about 30% of your overall calories to be coming from dietary fats. So this can be olive oil, it can be coconuts, avocados, nuts, seeds. Some meat is even going to be containing some of that dietary fat as well. So fat, you need to eat less volume of it because per gram, it is 9 calories, whereas carbs and protein are only 4 calories per gram. So the amount of fat that you actually have to eat is very small. So if you look at nuts, if you had a handful of that, there's going to be a lot of calories in that versus if you had maybe a sweet potato and you compare them per gram. So fat, you want 30%. Protein, you want at least 1 gram per pound of body weight. Now, this can be preferred, or I should say ideal body weight as well. And if you are already postmenopausal, sometimes even in perimenopause, you might even want to up that a little bit if you are being active and trying to readily build muscle and prevent muscle loss. So when you are doing weightlifting, it is kind of tearing down some of those muscle fibers. And so making sure that you have enough protein to restore them is very important. So protein, like I've said before, at least 1 gram per pound of body weight or ideal body weight. And then carbs, something that women very much don't need enough of usually. This is something you want to make sure that you still have. You need a little bit less once you go through perimenopause and into menopause, but you do still need them to be able to thrive and have enough energy. So kind of continuing, talking about carbohydrates is discussing keto diets and the fat burning mode that we get with keto. Now, what happens when they do studies specifically on women with keto diets is that women will oftentimes lose lean body mass and they will lose some muscle. They will put on some fat. They may improve their insulin, But as a whole, when we are going through perimenopause or any time in life really, keto is not the best for women. Men actually have a different way of burning energy, and so they might be able to thrive on some of these things. So when we look at a lot of research, it is done on men. It is not done on females. And so with that, when we actually look at female data, keto is not the best. Neither is intermittent fasting or exercising without eating. So that's something to keep in mind with your schedule. Now, when we are eating with exercise, one thing we want to make sure that we are doing is eating something before and after exercise, specifically making sure that we have some protein before and after exercise. So you want at least 15 grams of protein before a workout. So this can be a protein shake, it can be something quick. And then afterwards, you want to make sure you have maybe 30, even to 40 grams of protein, and you want to try and hit that as soon as you can after you work out, because once again, our body is going to kind of be signaled that it is in a food emergency and energy shortage. It's going to want to put on fat and it is not going to want to support our muscle. So getting that protein soon after we exercise is a very important thing for our lean muscle mass and making sure that we are keeping our muscle and even adding to it and building it. Now, when we are looking at our fruits and veggies, we want to make sure to eat the rainbow, eat a variety. And so those of you who are already active, those of you who have these exercise habits established or who plan to, one thing I do want to mention is the prominence of women in sports and women who exercise and work out, who I consider athletes as well, who are not eating enough. This is very close to my heart because this is why I've been dealing with health issues for the better part of the year, is relative energy deficiency in sport. They call it REDS. And this can affect your thyroid. It can affect your gut. It can affect your menstrual cycle and your hormones. And it can affect your mental health. It can affect so many things, specifically a shortage of carbohydrates. And if you continue to do this and you continue to try and diet and work out super hard, it is going to affect one of these body systems. Our bodies truly need enough fuel. Our performance is going to be better. Our attitude is going to be better. Our entire life is going to be better. And I, for one, think that is more important than trying to maintain an image. And in fact, what's going to happen when we eat enough is we are actually going to get the body that we've been working so hard to get and haven't been able to because we have had a shortage of calories. And so please make sure you are eating enough. The calorie range that my doctor gave me for people who are active, you definitely should be in the 2000s unless you are very, very petite and small. And so for me, I should be well into the 2000s. For someone a little smaller in stature than me, they should still be into the 2000s. So I want you to consider this, especially if you're adding in HIIT and SIT. And I just wanted to have this little blurb about energy deficiency specifically because I know it's something that I dealt with my entire life as an athlete, as an active woman, and trying to also look a certain way. So many of us struggle with this, and we only get there and we only have a good quality of life and our body is only going to look a certain way when we eat enough and we fuel our body and give our muscles what they need. I went on kind of a ketogenic diet as a part of my gut health healing to starve my gut bad bugs of carbohydrates because that's what they love to eat. And when I started eating carbs again, I never ate enough. And so when I started tracking and I added in enough, I was blown away by my energy, by my brain function. I felt like a new person. So I just wanted to mention that because I know I'm not the only one who struggles with that. So keep that in mind as you do all of these things. Now, as a whole, when we're getting into this perimenopause and menopausal state, this is something I'm going to dive into because I want to go to bat for us. I want to figure out what we should be doing at this age because a lot of people aren't going to be talking about it, and a lot of people that are talking about it are talking about male data instead of female data. So I wanted to share some of the resources where I got all of this information. Stacy Sims is a researcher and also helps coach Olympic athletes and has been going through a lot of this female data and physiology and the differences. She's based out of New Zealand, and she used to be a professional athlete herself. And she has a few books called Roar and Next Level. And she is on a lot of podcasts too. I recommend you checking her out on Instagram, going through some of her podcasts, reading her book, because she is such an amazing resource. So check her out. And also, I can tell you a little bit also about the workouts. So the program that I started doing is called Empower, and it was made with Stacy Sims. There's another workout program that I eventually will probably try as well, and it is with Haley Happens, and she is also on Instagram, and you can check her out. I haven't looked at the format of the workouts, but if Stacy Sims is involved, I have a feeling that she knows what she's doing. So I will continue going to bat for us. These are a lot of different exercise and nutrition changes. I'm throwing them at you because I want you to have all the information, because I have been just wrapping my mind around this for like the last 2 weeks. That is all I've been listening to. That's all I've been reading. And I know I have more to dig into, but I wanted to share what I have been learning, because I feel it's detrimental that females hear this as they are going through these stages before they get on the bike and start doing all this cardio and cutting carbs, so they actually know what they should be doing to work with their physiology.